Australia, a country of dreams, a nation living from tourism, a destination for backpackers and international students. I also chose this country to go to school abroad for 3/4 of a year. I wanted to explore the world, meet people on the other side of the world and gain experiences for life. Hello, my name is Florian Rachman and I lived in Cairns in Australia for 9 months. I have been learning English for a long time, but where's the profit without being able to use my knowledge in some way? I have often asked myself this question, even though I am aware that my knowledge will help me a lot in my working life. This is why I decided to go to a language school in Great Britain during the summer holidays 2017 and to live in a homestay family during that time and explore the surroundings. But that was not enough. I wanted to go further and longer away. Since my parents have always supported me in this idea, nothing stood in the way except for a high organizational effort and huge stacks of paperwork. Most backpackers and international students rely on specialized companies for organization and advice. We therefore researched several organizations and then made the first of many decisions. We felt we were in good hands with AIFS, the American Institute for Foreign Study. The company offers everything from high school programs to work and travel to volunteer programs. As the name suggests, it's mainly about America, but there are also departments for various other countries. For me, it was not clear from the beginning that I wanted to go to Australia. Before my year abroad started, I had never been elsewhere than in Europe, so everything was new territory for me. I was particularly interested in New Zealand, Canada and Australia. Due to my interests and hobbies, Canada was eliminated from the selection relatively quickly, so I was left with New Zealand and Australia. Then I received school suggestions from AIFS, considering my hobbies and interests, and had to make a list of 3 schools. Since the schools in Australia appealed to me more than the ones in New Zealand, I was able to narrow down the selection. In the end, I had a list of only 2 schools, one at the Sunshine Coast and one in Cairns, the Cairns State High School. With this list and a lot of personal information, I then applied to these schools. My first choice, the school at the Sunshine Coast, unfortunately had no place for me, so it became, as it turned out later to my satisfaction, the Cairns State High School. This was the beginning of a time that felt endless, the waiting time for a homestay family. On the way home from school, the unexpected happened. My homestay family was to be a retired couple. After further planning, the departure was getting closer and closer. This brought me to my last sailing training with a farewell party, saying goodbye to my class and of course packing my bags. And then the big day arrived. Excited for the flight, me and my family drove to Frankfurt, because from there I flew to Australia with a group and a travel companion from AIFS. We arrived early at the airport and after checking in my suitcase I said goodbye to my family and of course to my dog. Thrilled, we all got on the plane. First we flew with a Boeing 777 from Emirates to Dubai. There we changed to an Airbus A380, which brought us to Sydney in 14 hours. For me, the flight to Dubai, although it was much shorter, was more exhausting than the one to Sydney. When we arrived in Sydney, we all had to go through immigration, which fortunately went smoothly. Then we were all taken to our hotel by a small bus and quickly went to sleep. The next morning we had to get up early to drive to a wildlife park after breakfast, where we encountered the animals Australia is known for: kangaroos, koalas and emus. Furthermore, we drove to the famous Blue Mountains. There it is relatively cold and windy in the winter, but that didn't stop us Germans, who are used to the cold. We all knew that it would still become warm enough in the following months. In the next few days we also explored the city center. We saw the world famous Sydney Harbour Bridge and the impressive Opera House. The first time we went swimming was at Bondi Beach, which is right next to the most photographed pool in the world, the Iceberg Pool. After our time in Sydney, our ways have then separated. For me it went to Cairns. There was another German girl in Cairns with AIFS, but at a different school. For us the flight was much more exciting than the one to Sydney, because we were about to meet our homestay families. When we arrived in Cairns, the moment had come. With my heavy suitcase I stepped out of the security area and was lovingly welcomed by my host mother and a host brother from Italy. Once home I quickly unpacked and then we had dinner. After the long flights I slept long the next morning before my homestay family showed me around. At that time I lived in Brinsmead, a town a bit further inland from where I could take the bus to school. The next day was my first day of school at Cairns State High School. The first day we just got information and bought our school uniforms. Since I was in the 10th grade I had to wear a shirt and shorts in the school blue. Like the paperwork before, all the information was overwhelming, but I felt well taken care of. Besides a few other Germans and mostly Italians, a Norwegian and Brazilian student arrived with me. At that time there were about 75 international students at Cairns State High School. In the next few days there were more organizational things to do, such as setting up the school software on our laptops, because the classes are mainly digital. Furthermore, I got to know my teachers and did my best to quickly establish contact with Australians. I was totally happy with my choice of subjects. I had chosen design and technologies, film, science and PE besides math and English when I was in Germany. In the first weeks I started to explore the area. Places I went to regularly during my time in Cairns were the Esplanade with its many restaurants and the lagoon with the famous fish sculptures. Moreover, I often went to Cairns Central, a shopping center in the heart of Cairns, and to the German club. The school offered several excursions, starting with a snorkel trip to the world famous Great Barrier Reef, which is just 1.5 hours off the coast of Cairns. The coral and animal diversity was overwhelming, although I could imagine that the reef was once much more colorful. An excursion to the Daintree rainforest was also offered. The Daintree rainforest is a rainforest north of Cairns. There we spent some nights at the Daintree Rainforest Observatory, an active research station of the local university. We made trips to Mossman Gorge, Cape Tribulation, and the jungle surfing.
It's our favorite potion. Come on, baby, let me tell you one time that our days will never end, yeah. No, our days will never end, yeah. No. Come on, baby, let me tell you one time that our fire that I love it till you never break apart.
We also successfully set traps for bats and then were able to see a variety of bats at night. Another school trip took me to Japukai Open Air Museum. The museum is all about the indigenous people of Australia and how they used to live, especially in terms of medicine, music, dance and fighting. We could throw boomerangs and spears and also paint them ourselves. During the first 10 weeks of school, the third term of 2019, I got to know many Australians and made friends at the local sailing club. After these 10 weeks, I was then looking forward to a trip with Education Queensland International to the Northern Territory. Together with other internationals, I flew from Cairns to Darwin, where we met the rest of our travel group. With a bus we drove from Darwin through national parks with many beautiful rock formations, waterfalls and anthills, which are also called termite mounds, towards Alice Springs. On the way to Alice Springs, we stayed at campsites near Kakadu National Park, Litchfield National Park and Catherine Gorge, and often slept under the clear sky. After an overnight stay in the biggest city in the middle of the outback, we drove to one of Australia's landmarks, Uluru, or also called Ayers Rock. At the time, Uluru was about to close for hikers, so there was a high number of people in the area. We did a hike around the side of the massive mountain and were also able to see it from above during a 15-minute helicopter ride. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me and the first helicopter flight in my life. After that, we did a hike along the cliffs of Kings Canyon before driving back to Alice Springs and staying another night there. We then got on a plane to Melbourne and from there to Cairns. The whole trip was 10 days long and a fantastic experience for which I am very grateful. Since my current homestay family flew to Europe for a month, I had to stay with another homestay family for this time. Therefore, I spent the month with a very loving teacher couple and, unlike at my previous homestay family, I felt very comfortable and welcome. The family lives in Edge Hill, which is closer to the city center than Brinsmead, right next to the Botanic Gardens and hiking trails up the small mountains next to the airport. I also went to Bahana Gorge and to the Nandroya Falls with my host mom for swimming, to very wonderful places with refreshing waters. Furthermore, we made a trip to Hartley's Crocodile Farm, a crocodile farm between Cairns and Port Douglas. During my time with this temporary family, I also went to Green Island, a sand island on the way to the outer reef, to go snorkeling. Together with another German student, I saw some fish there and, as the highlight of the day, a shark a few meters next to us. The time with this family showed me that I can feel much more comfortable in a different family than my initial homestay family. Even before the time with the second family, I had the thought to change something about the situation, but that finally made me initiate a change of family. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay with the second family because they had planned a trip to Tasmania for the long vacations. Therefore, the coordinator in my school looked for another family. Fortunately, I ended up with a family that lives at one of the northern beaches. These include Palm Cove, very well known to tourists, Trinity Beach, Yorkeys Knob, Masons Beach and Holloway's Beach. Holloway's Beach is located north of the airport behind Masons Beach and has a nice beach, a restaurant and a few cafes. I felt very happy there. Along with that, the connections to the city, Smithfield and other northern beaches were very good. My year abroad was a time when wish after wish came true, but especially the long-time dream of learning to dive finally came true. As an EQI student, you are not allowed to go diving with any company, instead special permits are needed. In Cairns, diving courses are offered for international students, but unfortunately only during school phases on weekends and only once per term. I did the open water diving course, which teaches you the basic skills to a depth of 18 meters. The diving course consisted of 1 day of theory, 1 day of diving in a pool and then 2 days at the reef. These new depths compared to snorkeling allowed me to see other fish and corals. After the first 2 terms, so about 6 months, I had summer holidays which are during Christmas time in Australia and was happy to welcome my parents and my sister to my temporary home. We had planned a trip on the way from Cairns to Brisbane. It all started in Cairns, where I showed my family around, of course, but especially went snorkeling with them from a sailing catamaran at the outer reef. And went to the mountain village Kuranda in the rainforest with them. There we went to several animal parks to cover a wide range of Australia's wildlife. After that we drove to the Atherton Tablelands, which are well known for the many beautiful, though not too big waterfalls. Next we drove to Mission Beach. The beach was different compared to the ones in Cairns, but not a bit less wonderful. From there it was not far to Townsville, where we saw underwater animals in an aquarium called Reef HQ, which we couldn't see while snorkeling. We then made a longer stop in Early Beach at the Whitsunday Islands at Christmas, a very famous place among tourists, mainly for the snorkeling experience. Therefore we sailed to the Whitsunday Islands with an old sailboat and went snorkeling there. We were especially excited about the many sea turtles we saw. Yangela was our next stop, where we saw platypuses in a river. Australia is the country of surfers, but it is not possible to surf in the northeast because of the wave-shielding Great Barrier Reef. Agnes Water is therefore one of the northernmost surfing beaches, which we used to take a short surfing course there. For my sister and me, this was another dream fulfilled. Fraser Island, the world's largest sand island, has many famous places to offer, including Lake Mackenzie, the SS Maheno, the Champagne Pools and Indian Head. We spent one night on the island, so we were lucky to have 2 days to explore the White Island. We continued on to Nusa, where we spent New Year's Eve in a national park. With that, we reached the last stage of our tour. The last stop was of course Brisbane. In Brisbane we went to South Bank, went on the Ferris wheel there, walked through the shopping malls of the city and took a ferry on the Brisbane River at night. For me, the holidays were not over yet, but my family had to fly back to Germany. After a hard farewell, I stayed with a friend from sailing in Germany for some days. Together we went to Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary and again to South Bank. Then I also had to fly back to Cairns, where school started again after a few more days. Another place I visited during my time in Australia was the impressive Smithfield Army Museum with hundreds of tanks and military vehicles. Sad but true, most of them were from Germany. I also went to an aquarium in Cairns and was able to go to Fitzroy Island for a day of snorkeling on one of my last weekends. During this fantastic time I made a lot of friends at the Cairns Yacht Club, where I was able to regularly help with training or sail for fun myself. Unfortunately, I had to leave this fantastic environment and my friends before the last school term ended and before I could do another diving course. The reason for this was the coronavirus, which from the current view will definitely go into history. Due to rapidly progressing border closures and developments, I decided after long discussions with my parents that I would come back home about 3 weeks earlier, so that I would be home when no more travel would be possible. At first it wasn't easy to find a flight, but in the end I flew with Jetstar to Sydney, and after a few hours in the city, which were totally worth it, I started my journey home with Emirates, passing through Dubai to Düsseldorf. On both flights the planes were full because several airlines had combined their flights. Finally, I would like to thank everyone who supported me during the planning and of course in Australia itself. First and most important, I would like to thank my parents who have always stood behind me and have made the many wonderful experiences financially possible. They have always supported me in my decisions and needs and helped me in difficult times. Thank you. I would also like to thank my homestay families for allowing me to live with you and having this great time. The Kent State High School turned out to be a very good choice for the year abroad, and I would like to thank the coordinators, teachers and other staff there as well. Last but not least, I would like to greet all my friends I got to know in Australia and thank you for welcoming me at school and elsewhere and for the fun we had together. You are all welcome here in Germany.